Hello everyone, welcome to Insurance Business TV and welcome to our final construction insurance power panel of 2025. Now, you might actually be seeing this at the start of 2026, but I promise you we are recording before the festive season. And why? Well, because we want to look back on the year that was and get a true state of the market overview on issues like tariffs, modular construction and softening rates. To take us through it all, we welcome back Chris McLean, Managing Director, National Leader Construction and Infrastructure at Aon, and Colin Wight, Director, Senior Client Advocate, Construction at Willis. So welcome back both, and given the growing awareness, especially of course over the last few months, around soft cost insurance, covering things like project management, financing delays, permit costs, etc., what trends are you seeing among construction clients? And indeed, are you increasingly recommending soft cost coverage, and how do you justify it to what might be conservative clients? Colin, I'll start with you.
Regardless of the insurance cycle or the market conditions and the economic environment, we always recommend projects have an insured soft cost. So a lot of the work we do and continue to do with our clients is work with them to identify those soft costs and make sure they're assigned to the correct insurance buckets. What we find sometimes is that what they define as construction hard costs and soft costs might not necessarily translate the same to insurable hard and soft costs. So we spend a lot of time working with our clients to identify what those soft costs are, make sure they're properly identified, captured, and quantify them, as the key is to make sure that they're insuring to the level of soft costs that would be reincurred in the event of a catastrophic loss. So a lot of that work continues, and in this environment, it's that much more important because in the event of a loss, things are not getting less expensive, they're more expensive. So at the outset of a project, it's making sure those limits of those project policies are properly insured and the limits are properly set.
And a key here, perhaps, Chris, of course, is that it's the owner that really has the soft cost exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Paul, thank you again for allowing us to join you today. And Colin, good to be doing this with you. I think that sometimes people forget that soft costs truly are they're on every project, but they really are the owner's risk. And depending on the procurement model that's being used, whether it's a owner-controlled insurance program or a contractor-controlled insurance program, you may have a different level of just awareness of those exposures. And I think where it comes through is when an owner procures the builder's risk insurance, lenders and lenders advisors, there's a level of scrutiny there, and that's going to trigger the review and procurement of soft cost coverage on the builder's risk. The question of what is the right amount is a good one, and Colin's right. A lot of effort needs to be put into actually determining what is the right amount. Often lenders will just stipulate a percentage of the total soft cost number, and that's a very inefficient way to look at it. And I think owners aren't very well served by that. And it's better to go through the detailed soft costs and determine what's recurring, what's non-recurring, and to Colin's point, be efficient, right? When the general contractor procures builder's risk, often soft costs are completely forgotten, and usually they're realized or remembered when a lender asks for a certificate of insurance, or another stakeholder asks for a certificate of insurance, or looks at a policy and they see that there isn't soft cost coverage, and then that soft cost coverage has to be added. And the challenge around that is once a project has started, if there's been any kind of loss, generally insurers are not going to be very they're not going to be very likely to want to provide coverage for something where there could be an issue with cover. So it puts everyone in a difficult spot. So I think going back to the original question, is it being used more often? I wouldn't say it is. I'd say it's always there. I think what we're seeing maybe is a little more awareness around the risk exposure, and there's more careful attention to assigning who's going to be responsible for that, whether it's the builder's risk, being procured by the contractor or by the developer or owner.
Well, as I mentioned at the top, Chris, this is our final recording of 2025. And when we're reflecting on the year, we can't do so without talking about tariffs. There have been, of course, rising tariffs, especially on steel, aluminium, and lumber, and of course, supply chain bottlenecks surrounding that as well, affecting Canadian construction firms. So How are brokers helping clients to structure their coverage to mitigate project delay risks? And are you seeing more demand for delay in startup or trade credit insurance?
I would say that we're not seeing necessarily more demand for delayed startup or trade credit being used more. I think the Canadian market for trade credit, while it might be growing a little bit, it's not a huge market. It's not as ubiquitous as it is in Europe, for example. Where I tend to look at this and where I think the clients are better served, rather than procuring insurance, will be to look at their contractual provisions and remedies. And so thinking in terms of escalation clauses, change of law clauses, force majeure, these are all things that can be kind of looked at and refined in contract. I think looking at different procurement strategies, so making sure that we're bulk buying or pre-buying or thinking ahead about, if there is a loss and, our project is a mass timber project, what is our strategy around procuring more material? And does that sort of work for the project, but also all the various stakeholders, including insurers? Are insurers on side with where that material is being procured from? That's really important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then just having an effective and meaningful risk contingency is important. I think often projects don't have an appropriate risk contingency, and so they're not able to pivot and find solutions that are necessary. So you end up having problems around profitability and potentially projects just not making money, and that's an issue.
So perhaps we haven't seen an uptick in DSU and trade credit interest, Colin, but the current economic environment has definitely had an impact, hasn't it?
Absolutely. All project stakeholders of a construction project have a heightened awareness and concern about counterparty credit risks. So there's, as Chris mentioned, that is being looked at, assessed, but it's not necessarily translating into the height or increase in purchase of credit insurance, but rather looking to address those risks through means of contracts and adjusting clauses to account for potential escalation due to tariffs. When it comes to delay in startup, it's not that projects are purchasing delay and startup insurance more, but we're spending a lot more time with their clients, especially those purchasing delay and startup, is really making sure that the indemnity periods of that delay and startup period correctly reflects the actual time it would take to rebuild a project, taking into account supply chain issues and potential delays that would might not necessarily be reflective in the existing project schedule.
A theme of 2025 as well has been the expansion of modular construction and mass timber methods. They become increasingly common across Canada. So I'd love to find out from you both, what are the unique insurance challenges that they pose, and the risks as well, of course, and how are you advising your clients to manage them and to ensure there are no coverage gaps? Colin, how are you approaching it?
Projects utilizing modular construction, prefabricated components, or mass timber definitely have a different risk profile compared to a traditional project. And by that, I mean the risk isn't just at the project site. When you're using prefabricated components or modular components, the risk profile it transfers to offsite exposure. There's manufacturing risk at offsite facilities. There's offsite storage exposure, as well as increased transit exposure. So that's truly unique to these types of projects, and it needs to be properly contemplated, not only in the contractual requirements of the overall project, but also how to insure those project or those components. So that means making sure the project solutions that are put in place to ensure these projects properly address that offsite exposure and heightened transit exposure. And throughout the whole risk cycle of these projects utilizing modular construction is the heightened exposure of water ingress, egress, and water damage. When we think about water damage, it's not just about during the erection period of a project, but it's also while project materials are being stored and transported. So that's where it's particularly important that there's a very robust and specific material logistics plan, such as just-in-time delivery. Underwriters and insurers, they don't want to see prefabricated or components or modular components sitting in storage yards that are exposed to elements. So there's a lot of heightened scrutiny from our insurance partners for underwriting these particular risks that are unique to mass timber projects and projects involving modular construction.
Yeah, and there really is extra emphasis here, Chris, isn't there, on the risk transfer being reviewed by the owner?
Oh, absolutely. I think just to kind of layer on further to what Colin was saying, at the outset of the project, prior to starting, this is the only time you can really be, smart about determining where things are covered, whether it's transit, whether it's storage, and often those are missed or just misunderstood. And I think it's the opportunity is at the outset, and I think when everyone reviews those risks and understands where they're all being managed or covered, we're going to have a better project, and a more efficient project, because we're going to be able to then look at contingencies and maybe pull certain contingencies out. From an insurer perspective, I think, you know, as Colin said, these projects are, have heightened exposure, heightened risk. Insurers are going to ask a lot of questions, and so insurers will want questionnaires completed. They'll want to understand, how site security is being maintained. They'll want to understand how weather is being managed. If there is moisture detection, to what extent, and how is that being reviewed? They may want to do site visits. So these exposures or these types of projects are more exposed, and they are likely to become more and more common. But insurers still have a level of unfamiliarity, and maybe even a little bit of uncomfortability around them. And it's incumbent on people like Colin and I to make sure that our clients are well equipped and are providing all the information they need, so that we can have a successful project.
I just want to throw one final question at you both, if I may, because recent reports are suggesting that the global construction insurance market is softening, with more capacity coming in, leading to more competitive pricing for well-performing portfolios. Chris, I'll start with you. Are you seeing this softness reflected in Canada? Indeed, are Canadian construction lines remaining under pressure due to Nat Cat and cost inflation? And if you are seeing it soften, how are you leveraging that in order to negotiate better terms for your clients?
Certainly, we are seeing a softening of the market. We would say that over the last 16 to 18 months, the market has had a period of softening that in general could be anywhere between 10 and 20%. And that's not to say, though, that all lines are the same and all clients are treated the same and all projects are the same. But overall, we certainly are seeing a softening, and that softening is due to competition in the marketplace. Insurers are very anxious to grow. Construction, in particular, is seen as a real engine for opportunity. Certainly, infrastructure spending is high in Canada, and so insurers certainly want to be part of that. And that's leading to a lot of, as I mentioned, competition, but also opportunity for our clients. And so our clients are able to look ahead and think about, the future of their insurance programs, lining up with the right partners, and so it's a good story. Now, claims can change that, and certain lines are, you mentioned earthquake and flood being still challenges. I think insurers, underlying, have to be smart about looking at how they're pricing earthquake and flood, and ensuring that there is sufficient premium being charged. And so, in those cases, we're not seeing those rates maybe reduce as fast as perhaps a risk that isn't subject to earthquake or flood. But in general, absolutely, we are seeing softening, and that softening is expected to persist.
Okay, so that's a strong statement then, that the market is softening, Colin. But would you agree that that's likely to continue?
Absolutely. To echo Chris's comments, we've seen the Canadian construction market, from an insurance perspective, be soft throughout 2025, and is even starting to soften at the end of 2024. And we don't see any signs of that stopping. So we expect into 2026, the market will continue to be quite competitive. What we're seeing, or what we're trying to do to take advantage of this, is early engagement with our insurance partners. It's in order to try to find opportunities to secure better and improved terms and conditions for our clients, as well as find opportunities to look to restructure insurance programs, especially on the operational insurance programs, to see if there's opportunities to optimize and find better ways to secure the capacity and more price efficient ways to structure our insurers or our clients' programs. When it comes to underwriting discipline, we haven't seen that take a back seat. While there's new entrants coming into the market and existing carriers continue to deploy increased capacity, they're maintaining their underwriting discipline when it comes to reviewing earthquake, flood exposure. So that continues to be a main point of focus and scrutiny for underwriters. And we continue to see that trend continuing throughout 2026 as well.
Well, an excellent wrap up, and a huge thanks to you both, and indeed to all of our panelists for their contributions throughout the year. Our construction insurance power panel will be continuing in 2026, but until then, Happy New Year, and keep it right here at Insurance Business TV.